Dating after divorce is tough enough, but when you throw dating apps into the mix, it can feel like you're swimming in a sea of profiles and empty claims. I'm a Christian, they say, but what does that really mean? Many Christian singles assume that if somebody claims faith, the relationship will naturally align. But that assumption can lead to heartbreak or worse. In today's episode, Jessica Kastner and I are tackling the unique challenges of vetting Christian singles in a digital age. We'll walk you how to spot red flags and ask the right questions and wisely discern someone's spiritual walk. Plus, we'll discuss how to bring your own faith into the dating conversation early and what to do when Christian doesn't always mean Christlike. Stick with us and you'll walk away with clear steps to avoid being misled and find someone truly aligned with your values. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Thanks. So great to be back. Thanks for having me, Todd.
Oh,
I can't wait to talk about this. It's going to feel like a therapy.
I totally agree. I have been really excited. I know I'm probably excited about every episode or I wouldn't do it, right? But this one, I don't think I've ever taken more notes to look at. So I'm going to be cheating because I just wrote down so many things that.
Oh boy! Well, I'm not going to do the notes, so we'll see.
Let's talk about the problem. Now, I don't want to limit this to dating apps because I know you're not on dating apps right now. I'm not either. Yeah. But I'm going to say we're going to jump from there because that is the place when you're online that most dating apps allow somebody to say, I'm a Christian or not. You're allowed to put your religious preference, if you will. I don't like it that way. It may work that way. Yeah. But so someone puts Christian, well, you can choose, I only want to date Christians, and it'll only show you Christians back. And I'm just going to be honest, it's a thing me and my friends do. We take pictures, we take screenshots of people who will say Christian spiritually, and then they're wearing a bikini and they got the cleavage shot, and you're like, what?
Totally.
What is
Women
this?
do the same thing, and same thing with the guys. It's just like Christian, but which we'll talk about later. But
all the evidence does not scream that, but they put it there.
Yeah.
So it's a phenomenon of believers looking for other believers, and someone will categorize themselves as a Christian, and our job is to say, well, what do you mean by that? And I think that's what this episode is about, is like, what do you mean when you say Christian? Because we all come to it with different lenses on what that means to us. And there, hence, is the problem, because so much time is wasted in dating someone to find out, oh, we're not really talking about the same religion at all.
Yeah. I think that defines the problem. I think the problem is they have those boxes. They're not an atheist. They're not a Buddhist. So most people, so I live in New England, Catholicism, it's like 80% Catholic here. Okay. So it's really more of a cultural thing. People say they're Christian because, I believe in Jesus, but they go to church. Most people around here, honestly, go to church on Easter, Christmas, and that's it. So I feel like it has made me just because of the problem have to hone in. We're almost more on your defenses because the word Christian, I would say, I read an article once that says most people in the United States would call themselves Christians if you gave them, but if in our definition of Christianity, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's a way of life. Like it's an actual lifestyle. So if you go into, I don't even like, born again Christian, non-denominational Christian. I just go into the meaning of Christian in Hebrew is, people say it's either mini Christ or follower of Jesus. So to me,
follower of the way. That's right.
Following. So that's an active thing, right? It's like you are actively participating in your religion, but you're just following Jesus. So you take what most people around here would call Christian, and what believers, let's just say believers, real Christians consider what being a Christian is. It's like, it's night and day. We're not even talking about the same thing. So I think that's the first step to take, is identifying the problem. It's like you kind of have to delve deeper. You can't, on the apps, you can't just assume a guy is a Christian or a woman is a Christian just because they click that box. And I feel bad for y'all down there, because down south, I think it's much more of a culture thing, like the Bible Belt,
You are 100% correct. So I'm going to echo what you said, and that is, there's a phenomenon, whether it's in the North or the South, that I'm not a Hindu, I'm not a Buddhist, I'm not a Mormon, I must be a Christian.
Yeah.
And so that people just hood that because they're like, well, I'm not nothing. I do believe
Yeah.
there's a God. Maybe I don't
Right.
know what
Yeah.
that is.
Celebrate Christmas, believe in Jesus, right?
That's right. A-
Yeah.
And then I also, we're going to go and poke. I'm sure we're going to ruffle feathers today. There's just no way around it because everybody has a different definition. So people are going to get a little offended.
Yeah.
But I do believe that when there's Catholicism, I'm always wondering because there are Christians who are Catholic
Mhm.
and there are Catholics who are Christians, but not every Catholic is a Christian.
Totally. So
And
I was raised, my dad was a pastor. He considered Catholicism a cult and he would like evangelize to the Catholics. So I've come a long way because now I've known true Jesus loving Catholics. Like my grandmother ended up getting saved. So she called herself a born again Catholic,
yeah,
where it's like, okay, they love the rituals. It's comforting to them. I don't think there's anything. But in general, I feel like it's very ritualistic Catholicism. And unfortunately, I think that replaces your relationship with God. And people think that's all it is. I've come a long way in how I would have never even probably dated a Catholic, which sounds so judgy and terrible. But I do think that's an extra layer. When you talk about Catholicism, I just think you have to maybe dig a little deeper.
it it is another layer, so much so that if somebody doesn't say they're a Christian, if they say they're a Catholic and they don't say they're a Christian, I swipe left
Really?
because I'm like,
Even
you're probably a Catholic. And I'm like, I don't want to date a Catholic. I want to date a Catholic, a Christian who may go to a Catholic
yeah, there is a
church.
difference. Good point. Hmm.
Yeah, so that one's a little tricky. Okay, so we've identified the problem and the challenge. So let's just start with the easy ones. I think let's just pretend we're talking on an app or first date, right?
Yep.
Your early communication. I think an easy way to vet out someone's walk, if what their definition of Christian is asking them about church. Where
Mhm.
do you go to church? Do you go to church? All that. Here's one of the problems as a guy
Mhm.
if you ask somebody where they go to church, and it depends on what size town you live in,
Yeah.
some people are reluctant to tell you because they're like, they don't want you creeping on their church.
Yeah.
They don't
I
want
see
to
that.
tell you where they go to church. So it's like, yeah, I go to a church, or I'm faithful to my church, or I really love my church. But
Yeah.
you can't really ask without looking like a creep.
Agree. Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't either, and I haven't been asked like which church because same thing. I live in a small town, and yeah.
Yeah, why
Uh,
would you want to admit your stomping grounds where somebody who you might not even be talking to in 24 hours now knows they can find you every Sunday morning at 9:30 at
yeah.
that church?
Let's take church out of it though, because I feel like even if you do go to church, my problem is always like, well, they go to church because I live in a predominantly, sorry, I'm going a little blurry, predominantly Catholic region. People do go to church. I think sadly, maybe it's a societal thing, or gives you a status in the
Yeah.
in the community. If you go to church, you check a box that says that you're a good person, and I think these are all good intentioned seeking people. I just unfortunately it's they're just being kept from the full truth.
So
But
church isn't a wonderful litmus test, even though when I hear somebody that's plugged into their church, they get a bonus point because it
totally.
does mean they can get the value of the fellowship and they're not a lone wolf in the world being a Christian because the Bible does not tell us to do that.
Yeah.
Now, I am going to speak out of both sides of my mouth. At least I'm acknowledging that. I also believe that church can be very hurtful for
Yeah.
those who are going through or on the other side of a divorce.
Agree.
And that's why I have to raise my hand here.
Yeah.
Is I really never really plugged back into a church because I got so
Mm.
damaged by them that I didn't want to lean in. And so I also say it's not a fair litmus test with
But it's a
asking about church because,
conversation.
yeah,
So I
not
think
everybody leans in.
a woman would understand that, like, oh yeah. And I think just the language someone uses, like everything you described, you had church hurt, you probably were part of a church. I know a little bit of your story. So you actually were integral in building that church. Well, then that solves it, right? Someone's not gonna start a church and not be
Right.
really, probably not really know God. So I do think it does come out in conversation. But I think we agree that church isn't the ultimate and only checkbox. That's just
Right.
part of it. This sounds a little intense, but I've learned, or one of my advices when we're talking about questions to ask, like how do you dig deep a little quicker and reveal these things on date number one, two, or three instead of 20, or you're in a relationship attached to someone? I just always say, I wouldn't use a language like, when did you get born again? Or when were you saved? Because I think those can be loaded words and sometimes there can be some translation issues. But I just say, did you always know the Lord? Or like, was there a time when you really had an awakening? Or I just asked their story, but specifically their story with God. Like, and I share a little bit about mine. So it makes them, I was like a rebellious, crazy person. Thank God, blah, blah, blah. So I feel like, so it doesn't seem like you're grilling them. You're just like sincerely interested, which is a good sign, I think, when you're getting to know someone. So I think that's really the question to ask because it's hard. You could tell by the way someone talks. You could tell if they're BSing, you know.
No, you're 100% right. I would say I'm going to add a layer to what you just said. I wrote down ask their testimony. The
Yes,
problem
awesome.
is, Moni, I actually have been criticized multiple times on dates because people are like, I feel like I'm on an interview. And I'm like, well, you are. I mean, we're not going out just to have ribeye tonight. We're trying to find out if we're a match. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't sit there with a pen and paper and grill people, but sometimes they feel that way. But yeah, I would probably ask somebody their test, like, tell me a little bit about your testimony. Like, I want to hear it. Yeah, and it's just, I want them to tell their story. If they're not willing to tell a story, if they don't have a transformation in their life, then they're not going to live a transformed life.
exactly. Yep. And one other question I think is good to ask because some people don't go to church. So if you're in that scenario, or people have church hurt or they're jaded, I mean, whatever, it happens. I always, my whole thing is like, really what's important is like the time you spent with God. Like if you are a Christian, real Christian, that's your number one purpose and goal for living. So I always say like, oh, like work is so crazy. Like, right? Like, how do you say if the guy commuted? I work from home, so I have my Bible and prayer time every single morning. Easier set, it's easy for me. So I could just be like, wow, when do you find time to like read the word or like what's your like rhythm like? What's your like time with the Lord, right? Because that'll
Revealing. It's super revealing. And I sort of ask that question too of like, tell me the podcast you're listening to. Like,
yes.
how do what are you reading right now in the Bible or whatever? And if they're like, they're not, you're like, okay, well, that says something because how can you not spend time in the word? Like it's got to be in your rhythm. And I'm not saying you every morning you got to wake up at 6
Exactly.
o'clock.
Yeah, we don't want to come across as holy roller. Like
Right.
people have seasons, right? People have like I've plateaued and I've like been stale on my faith, and I mean that's everyone's experience usually. So it's not that we're like, oh, he doesn't he's only 5 times a week that he's reading the Bible, but like what you're trying to reveal is the hunger and quality of intimacy that someone has with God. It's just all we're trying to figure out does this person prioritize God above anything, above their job, above working out, above their fun things, above their kids, right? That's what being a Christian is. It's sacrificial and it's hard. So you have to walk with the Lord to stay a Christian.
Let's take a quick break.
Are you making the tough decision about divorce or in the middle of your recovery? Well, I have a few books you will want to read. Don't navigate one of the hardest journeys you will face without a roadmap. Visit toddturner.com/books to find the helpful guide you can keep with you during this time of decisions and healing. toddturner.com/books. Now back to the program. 100%. And then, all right, so we're going to parlay that to the next one. And that is, what is your view of the Bible?
Mm,
Meaning, if you're saying if you don't spend time in God's word, well, that's an assumption that you and I are making that a mature believer would be spending time in the word. But then that begs the question, what do you think about God's word? I mean,
yeah, I
what's
really
your
like
view
this
on,
question.
is it
Yeah,
infallible? Does that matter
right.
what they think?
Yeah. So I'm a literalist. I believe it's word for word. I don't think you could cherry pick, but I believe that you should understand cultural context. So Paul says, slaves obey your masters. We have to understand when it was written and what would happen if all the slaves rebelled. So I really feel like I think that question is good because everyone should have an opinion. If they're like, whoa, God wrote the Bible and it was inspired, it's kind of like, okay. But I think I'm willing to tolerate someone who's like, well, there was lapses in time. Did God make heaven and earth in 7 days, or was a day representative? Did that word have different meanings? So it could have spanned 1,000 years. That's why I have dinosaurs. Like, I'm totally okay with that. But I really think you should think it out, right? It's the one thing we have, the whole representation of our faith system. You should probably know what you think, right? And if you don't, that's just like, they're just basic. Not to, this sounds terrible. I sound so
Uh,
judgy.
I love the way you word that. I will echo everything you said. I would not date somebody because we disagree on, is it a literal 6 days or not? I'm not going to die on that hill, but I am going to die on the hill that if you think a lot of the Bible was written to people 2,000 years ago and it's not applicable to us today,
Yes.
that is a line I can't live with, because if you don't believe the Bible is, if God did not reach out from space and time and come in here and speak to us, if his word is not relevant and you can start cherry picking, well, then we'll never be able to have any debate, because you're just going to say, well, I believe this, and then I'll say I believe this. And if we're not coming from the same place, that
Yeah.
we're going to attempt to get our theology from God's word, well, then we don't have a lot in common.
Yeah. And that's scary because say you're committed to that person or say you get married and there's those discrepancies. Well, the Bible's usually what you come down to when you're going through hard things. Like, so if you're like, we don't know, this is hard, but what does the word say? If you're fully committed to the truth of that word, then how's it going to guide you? Right.
That's
And
right.
I'll go one step further. What drives me nuts even more than that is people that add to or say the Bible is a evolving piece of work.
Right.
There's churches, I believe it's the Congregational Church, that's their they put that out in a press release.
Yeah.
So I keep sorry, I keep going blurry. There we go. So yes, I agree. It's like the importance of the Bible is huge. It sounds so simple, like, oh, if you're a
It
Christian, but
sounds simple. It's really
yeah,
complex, because
yeah,
if you can say, I mean, and I'm not trying to get super political in this, but I'm going to give it a real world example. Either God condones or vilifies, whatever word I'm looking for, homosexuality, or he doesn't.
yeah,
Like, God's not up there. If your view of God is that he gave people thousands of years ago a rule, but he didn't give it to you, or, and that was a bunch of dumb people who were uneducated back then, we know better now.
mhm,
Well, that's putting your brain above God's brain. I'm like, well, you and I are going to have nothing in common, because
yeah,
I hold God's view and his laws so high that he knows more than I do. And if you believe we know more than that
yeah.
literature, well,
And
then
then where does it end, though? You could apply that to
where does
any.
it end?
So women, I would have a hard time trusting a Christian man that believed that way because it's like, well, then your truth is relative. And so does that transcend to marriage and how you behave in a marriage context and
That's right.
what you look at, if you're not held to a standard that you believe is infallible, then I don't want to like follow you, that's scary.
You're 100% right, and it is. You're right. It's a slippery slope, because
Yeah.
if you start picking and choosing what you think is right, well, then where does that slippery slope end? And
Right.
I don't want to get too much into this weed. We're going to stop this rabbit trail here in a second. But if you believe that everything is relative, then why would you even waste time calling yourself a Christian?
Exactly.
Because
It's a mystery.
it
Well,
either is true or it's not.
sound good. No, I think that's the cultural Christianity thing, right? Because
Right.
it's like, oh, you're good God people stories, like it's good American, the flag, and we love God. I think it
Or
just checks the box for people.
Well, okay. I'm going to jump in my notes because I think it fits right here. And it's one of my flags is, if someone, and I'm not going to talk about right or left yet, we will, but if somebody can't separate American culturalism, nationalism from
Yeah,
Christianity,
yeah.
giant red flag. Because
Same.
if you think that churches need a flag on their stage and that we're going to talk about politics all the time,
No.
that isn't for me, because you are picking the
Yeah.
parts of the Bible you want, and it works. That knife cuts
Yeah.
both ways, because I know people who would swear on a stack of Bibles that if you love the Lord, you will never vote Democrat. And I know people who would say, if there's no way you love the Lord, and you would vote
I
Republican.
do too.
And they both swear they're right.
It's
And
wild.
it's like, I'm
There's just so much
studying.
hyper focus on it, right? And I think it got melded in. It's like there's politics and religion, and there's always a way to have grace and be loving. And it's so out of control in the last 10 years. It's so sad because I love talking about politics, but you can't do it. You can't do it.
You can't. And so if somebody can't tell the difference
Yeah.
between their nationalism and their love for America and their Christianity, then it scares the crud out of me, because
Yeah.
I the Lord's kingdom work
Mm,
and reaching out to those who are lost is it's irrelevant to
yeah,
their voting.
yeah.
And all we got to do is look at Jesus. Like, how would Jesus vote? He wouldn't. He had the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the Zealots. He had everybody coming with their different angle of what they
Mm,
thought he was supposed to do. If you love Israel, then you would want to get rid of the Romans, or you would want, and he's like, no, I'm here to seek the lost. And that's what we're supposed to, if we're supposed to be Christ-like, we're
right.
supposed to be seeking the lost.
But I think
What
maybe
does that
Jesus
do?
would vote. I don't think God promotes apathy. I believe in like civil involvement and responsibility. But I think no matter which way Jesus would vote, he would know why. He would explain it with grace, and it wouldn't affect his view of people who agree with him or don't agree with him. So I don't even know if he wouldn't vote. I just feel like it just wouldn't. He would just vote and move on.
That no, I agree. Great point. I don't need somebody who says, "Well, I'm just staying out of the argument." Okay, that scares
No,
me
'cause I don't.
too.
Yeah.
I don't believe in that. I believe we are supposed to vote, but I would say I could see why people would vote whichever way they
Yeah.
vote,
Yes.
and it's just defend it. But to people to say, if you don't believe the way I do, that's my view of Jesus. Therefore, if you don't believe it, then you don't really understand Jesus. That scares me.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So let's parlay that into my next note, and that is denominations. We touched a little bit about Christianity, but in your mind, if somebody says I'm Church of Christ or I'm Southern Baptist or I'm whatever, like, does denomination raise flags for you?
A little biased. So maybe depending on the denomination, I'm not going to skirt your question, but some of them really represent, like Baptists, for example. There's a wide spectrum. There's the First Baptist, Fundamental Baptist. I think there's like 4 different kinds. And one of them, I don't want to like slaughter their title. So whatever, one
I
of them,
will. I will if you don't.
they require women to wear skirts at all times. I think I saw a bonnet once. I don't. So that would be a turnoff. But I would always have a conversation, even if it's a Catholic person. I think I'm trying to think if there's any denomination. Yes, probably the United Church of Christ, Congregationalists. Only because, and I don't want to get into any kind of doctrinal debate or anything, but they're very progressive and very liberal, open and affirming all of that as a like integral part of what they're representing nowadays. So I would still have a conversation. I don't think it'd be like, oh, you're not going to answer a question and get to know someone, but it would definitely be like an ick. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, without getting to the detail, denomination does matter to me. But
mm,
I also, once again, I don't want people listening to think we are talking about deciding whether somebody is on your
right.
level of what not that one's higher or lower. It's just
Yeah. Catholics
that
might look at us and be like, hard left. So,
right,
fine.
fair. All that's fair. But
Yeah.
you're trying to find a match.
Yeah.
And I would say I dated and married a Church of Christ, not United Church of Christ. That's way more progressive. This is more conservative. No music, lose your
Wow.
salvation, that kind of thing. And it was hard to fit in because I was like, I don't
Mm,
believe in these things. And so it was hard we had to church hop a lot because it
yeah.
was really tough because she came from 5 generations of Church of Christ. And I'm like, this is nonsense. And why don't y'all have music in here and
Yeah.
show me the verse? And I'm not
Yeah.
raising my kids in this. And it was
Well, especially when
problematic.
you have kids. When you have to raise kids with someone, this becomes a higher level conversation. For
Yeah.
me, that's a little more ancillary because nowadays churches have worship nights, they have conferences. Like you could even have like a hybrid situation. We take turns every other. Like that's what my mom and her husband do. He's actually Catholic, a born again Catholic, and she likes the charismatic. She wants to dance around with her banners. So it's like, that doesn't you they totally disagree. Actually, our church is like loud, like the loudest rock, and he's just like, why is it pitch black? Why are there lasers?
Right.
Like, yeah, he can't handle it. So it's a good example of they take turns and he'll come to like her worship nights. So I think that when you're not trying to raise kids together or find someone to get married and have kids with, 'cause a lot of divorced people are like if you're in your 30s or late 20s, I mean, people get divorced at all ages.
Yeah.
That I think is a higher priority conversation.
Yeah. You're 100%. You're 100% right. If you got to be in lockstep when
Yeah.
you're raising kids, you might have a little bit more freedom when you're empty nest. Well, we can swap a little bit. And that's my thing too, is I had an uncle who and he's passed away. But I would bet you that guy had never missed church. I bet I could count on my two hands how many times he ever missed church. He would leave, hunting or whatever, just like, I gotta be back Sunday, I gotta be back Sunday. And I'm like, I can count on how many times I've went to church this last year. Like, I don't hold that as God's up in the heaven looking at us and tallying how many times we went or we didn't go.
Yeah.
Yes, don't forsake the meeting of the brethren, but that's a vague verse. God knows there's wars. There's what do we just have with COVID? Like international health crises, like the plagues. Like God's not going to tell us you got to be there or I'm going to be upset.
Double duty for 2 years, guys. Yeah, my thought on that has evolved through the years. I used to be more like, can't believe they skipped church. I can't believe. I'm like so on the opposite end now, where it's like, well, church could be like me praying with my girlfriends. That's a gathering of us. I'm not even sure if I even think mega churches or big churches are biblical at this point. I'm doing my whole like, wait a minute, because I've gone through some tough just church experiences, as sadly a lot of people have. So
I totally agree, and you and I will talk about that offline. But I do believe in the sacraments. I believe in communion and baptism, and that's what I sort of miss when I don't go into the public ones. But I believe that the iron sharpening iron and that accountability can be had at fellowship 100 different ways without me sitting in your row and listening to that 45-minute sermon.
Yes, exactly.
I don't really need that.
Yep.
I know that's another conversation. Okay, I'm going to now just look down at my notes. Here's one that is the one we probably should have started with, and that is the gospel. Like hearing somebody's testimony, but when somebody says they're a Christian, what's their definition of the gospel? Because let's just say somebody does go to church. They say they love the Lord, and they do love the Lord. But when you ask them, what does it mean? Like, saved from what? Like, it's part of their testimony is hearing, what is your definition of the gospel?
What's the good news? Like, you were literally like, what's the good news?
What's so good about it? What's the bad part? So what's the good part? Like, I ask people that all the time. It's like, if you believe the gospel, well, the gospel's good news. Well, it has to be good because something was bad. What's the bad? Tell me the bad in your life that became good because of God's saving grace. And if they don't understand, I'm jumping in my notes. If they don't understand grace, then you don't understand the gospel. And so if I don't hear the word grace coming out of your mouth and permeating in your action, grace towards others, then you don't understand this grace if you're not giving this grace out.
So true. And one of the points we're talking about, how do you weed them out if we're like trying to help people? Like, how do you figure out if someone's a Christian or loves the Lord? And I feel like I think a lot of girlfriends are like, watch his actions, not his words. And you can apply this in the faith world. So it's like, what's the Matthew verse? You shall be known by their fruit. That just means whatever comes out of you. If it's, you're unforgiving or you're not merciful towards others, or you're like saying something about guy on the street, it's like your heart will reveal itself through your mouth. So I feel like that's a good point. And it explains it all. If you don't see yourself as fallen and in need of a savior, then you're in your self-sufficient, prideful way, right? Like why do you do anything, right? If it's just like a way of life and like a moral system, and that's what Christianity is to you, which I think is really common. But I think that's huge, is like finding someone who honestly, like, who needs Jesus daily. Like, I don't like these people that are like, oh, I said the prayer when I was 24. It's like, I am always like, oh, I need him like all the time, like 2:00 after lunch, but I'm like ready to swear at this guy who's going too slow on the road. Like, I think that's such a good quality, because I think I've talked about it before. My favorite characteristic in someone is humility, because that solves so much. If you see yourself for who you are and constantly in awe of what God has done for you and how God has loved through your continual filth, you will be loving and gracious to others, because you see yourself through that lens. You see others through that lens, which is the lens that God sees them in.
We're going to touch this part of the elephant 1,000 different ways. If you don't understand that nothing you did caused you to be a good Christian, like Christianity, that's my pet peeve. When I hear somebody say, I'm a good Christian, I'm like, well, then you don't know what a Christian is. There's no such thing as a good Christian.
I love that.
Zero. It is a oxymoron term. There's nothing that nothing that makes you a Christian by your behavior. So you do good behavior because you've been given a free gift, not in order to get it. And so if you don't see yourself as totally depraved,
Yeah.
that God graciously gave you salvation and a relationship with Him through no means of your own, then
Mm,
once you are humbled by that, to your
yeah.
point, well, then now you're like, well, then why am I carrying a sign that says God hates fags?
Right.
What do you mean? Like, what? God loves them, died for them, and wants you to love on them too. So why would you be sitting
True.
here preaching something different? So when you feel hate, when you feel condescending to
I
waiters,
know. I
all
know.
those things you're talking about, it screams they don't understand what they've been
What they
given,
received, which means did they really receive it?
which means did they receive it?
Yeah.
That's exactly
One of
right.
my things is when I first got saved, or I it was actually too overwhelming. I used to just cry. I was just crying all the time because I had love. I think I was a cold. I was like a mean girl before getting saved. So for me, it was like too much. It was like, oh my gosh, I have all this empathy, and I'm seeing everyone around me through God's eyes. It was wild, and it was like for a year. So it's like that's close to my heart. 'Cause it's like, well, that's true. He made me, who was mean and selfish, not be able to stop crying for everybody. So yeah, you want someone who aligns with that.
You've got to have somebody who can. Well, this is why the testimony is so important. If in that testimony it wasn't, well, I was born and raised in church, which is a lot of people's answer. Well, I'm a
Mm,
Christian because I grew up in church and I go to church every once in a while and I love Jesus. Okay, where's the testimony that talks about grace?
yeah.
The word grace and grace littering all or as many areas of your life that it can. We all fail. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
I fail billions of times a day. Um, if you don't hear that, it should be a giant red flag that they don't get it.
Okay, but I do think there's a grace abundant thing that goes on with like, oh, God's grace covers God's grace. So I think I'm a little like, oh, we should always be trying our best, trying to be more like Jesus, trying to be excellent. I don't want to be struggling with the same sin in 10 years I'm struggling with now. I know that's not what you're saying, but I
Right.
always have this little like red little perk that goes up when it's like, okay, yes, grace, yes. We don't want to be like, I can sin and do what I want for the rest of my life because of God's grace. Then you don't know what it is. Then it's like, then you
Right.
don't.
That is just
That's
called God
the
being indifferent and that he doesn't care. Well,
yeah,
okay. Now, without
yeah,
getting into too much theology talk,
yeah,
it is pertinent here because
yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in my notes because what you just said. And that is the Bible. I'm going to get on a soapbox for a second. The Bible is this amazing tension between truth and grace.
Mm,
Both are equal. Jesus was the perfect balance of truth and grace. What
yes.
we see in our personal life, our
Mm,
society, our denominations, and our politics is when we lean too far to one or the other. So
that's
when
what I
you're
get.
truth, you hold up signs that says God hates, fill in the blank. That's the
Mm,
truth side speaking.
yeah.
The grace side is like, no, God loves everybody. Let them do it. Let's invite them into our church. Well, hold on.
Mm,
That's leaning too far one way.
so true. Yep.
Republicans lean truth, Democrats lean grace. United Church of Christ leads truth. Regular Church of Christ leans grace. Other leads truth. Everything is this balance because we get it wrong.
Yeah.
Jesus is the only one who got it 100% right. So we're
Mm,
called to be, and we have to respect the truth side because truth matters. You can't say that it doesn't, but it doesn't trump grace. But
yeah.
grace can't trump truth either, or you're in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
So a mature Christian is constantly trying to keep them both equal,
Yeah, that's so true.
and
That's why
that's
I
hard.
love the Bible story where Jesus, the woman was going to get stoned by all the religious men, and he said, "Cast the first stone." But I used to do Bible studies with like young girls who were like in the juvenile justice system, and they talk a lot about like, well, if God loves me, why can't I keep smoking pot? Or if God loves me, and I'm like, God loves you, and because He loves you, He doesn't want to keep smoking pot. So I love the Bible verse. I always used to say, He didn't. Yes, He said, "Get out of here." He protected and stood up for the lady, but He said, "Sin no more."
And no
So he
more
had
truth.
grace and truth. So I love that story because it perfectly like epitomizes what you just said.
It's yeah. So to wrap up that thought is your testimony should be a life testimony, and it also should have a story of understanding grace. I would say if you smell that it's cheap grace, it just means we know more now. That's so cruel that God would kill somebody for an affair. It's like, well, no, but it's truth. You had an affair, like you could be put to death for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the New Testament's also the grace part. And by the way, that story's tough because even the story of the women, the guys trying to stone the woman still had it wrong. They weren't even following real Old Testament law anyway.
Oh, really?
And how come the man wasn't out there to be stoned either? Which
I
is
know.
another problem.
I've heard the man. I've heard maybe it was one of the Pharisees, whatever.
Well, right. So the point is that one wasn't even God. Jesus didn't ignore truth. He was sort of pointing out that you guys aren't even following the law. So why don't we let her go? How about that? Yeah. So okay. I talked a little bit about the do good and do bad. I do. Let's talk about that a little bit. Back to the fruit. So what are some of the fruits you should see? Well, we talked a little bit about church attendance, or at least valuing that. But I'm going to talk another fruit level, and that's giving. I don't know how you ask somebody what they give, but if you're not giving to your church and or giving to a parachurch ministry, if you don't see giving in their life, isn't that a problem?
And so, yes, it is. And I think so. People, if anyone's listening or watching and isn't a Christian or a person of faith, there's a New Testament verse. We believe in tithing, and it's giving 10% of your gross income, not your net. And I don't want to get into logistics of, well, does it have to be your church? I personally believe you could do a ministry or like a faith-based organization that feeds starving children. So I don't want to get into that because I know there's different. But yes, I think giving, it's the whole verse of like, wherever your treasure is, there your heart is also. I think that was Jesus. So here's the problem. Like I was going, when I was thinking about our talk, I'm like, well, why shouldn't you be unequally yoked? If you don't have to raise kids together, you can respect each other. Why can't you get married as long as he's a good person? And the problems that will come when I was thinking about them, one major one is money, is use of your money. Because if you're a Christian, you're going to give. And if someone comes to you and needs money, you're probably going to give it to them, and you're probably not going to be very materialistic. It's just not the lens that you're going to live life. And that could be, we've both been married. Most people watching or listening have been married. How many of us hadn't had fights about money and how to use our money? So throw two different views on what money even is. Everything comes from God. It's not a natural way to think. It's a supernatural way to think. You have to understand everything comes from God. And that's a tricky one, because this is like, put your money where your mouth is.
You're 100% right that if you don't have the lens of whose money it is and what the priority is, it's not to collect as much as we can so we can retire early and live the life we want. Not that that's not a layer of it. We're supposed to be responsible. Yeah. We don't want to be burdens to our kid or society. But but the lens. All right, I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit of the theology, just because this is what this podcast is all about. We're going to touch all the parts. A wise man once told me, because I'm in the fundraising business, that's literally what I do, is I help Christian churches, nonprofits raise money to help fund their ministry. So I have thought long and hard about this topic. And so I went to a couple of pastors and asked this question. Sorry, this feels like a rabbit trail, but I think it really fits here. And that is, what is our role when it comes to giving? Because I think a lot of pastors think incorrectly that our goal is to give 10% to our church and then anything above and beyond sacrificial somewhere else. But you owe your money to your church first and then hit your 10% and move over, which is biblically incorrect. And a lot of pastors would.
Most people think that.
Yeah, they would flip their lid if you preach something different.
What do you believe, or what's the truth then?
I believe the truth is there is clear biblical evidence that we are supposed to give to our local church. That is a fact. If you are ministered to, if you're part of a local body, you need to give to that body. That's a fact. There is no rule of 10%. Tithing is an Old Testament thing. New Testament is a cheerful giver. And in the New Testament, we see people who literally were giving to the apostles, laying at their feet, meaning there wasn't a 10% tithe. It was people were selling whole pieces of land and giving it. It was community-based giving to help those in need in your church. The Apostle Paul, in traveling on his missionary journeys, there was a famine going on in Jerusalem. And as he was going around to Philippi and, Corinth and all places, he was collecting money to give back to the people in need. He was literally parachurch ministering and collecting money
Yeah.
that was not for a local church, it was for people. So we have New Testament giving that's above and beyond, but it's not a 10%. He didn't say give to your church first, but we are to give to our church and we are to give to people in need. Period. In the story, there's no 10% rule and there's no priority of which one is more important than the other one. But you cannot give your money to a 501c3 if you're not giving to your local church.
I
It's
agree.
not max out at 10 and then anything and above. And so, yeah, it's not controversial. Like my argument is, if you disagree, prove it. Find me the scripture there's no scripture in the New Testament that tells you to tithe to your church 10%. Zero, doesn't exist. That was an Old Testament to the Israelites, and
So your caveat is
tithing's not even a New Testament word.
okay. So you think the percentage, there's no percentage in your mind. It should just be, you should be giving to what God calls you to, and do it cheerfully, and do at least something to your local church. If you would,
100%. And when
yeah.
people say, what about 10%? Then my argument would be, that'd be a great place to start. What if it's 20?
Girl, I'm for 10%.
If you say 10, then that means if you give 11, is that wrong? Did God, he told you 10. Like, it's just a great place to start. Like, be a cheerful giver. Give.
Yeah.
A
No, I
Christian
think 10 is the
gives.
bare minimum. I just always thought you had to tithe 10%. Most people I know believe that. So,
Well, I know, and that's what most pastors assume, which is why I have a whole course for churches, because I'm like,
okay.
what frustrates me is I have pastors who statistically only like 20 to 30% of people give in a church anyway.
Yeah. Oh,
So
I know. I
if
know.
you're sitting there saying, "Oh, well, I wish people gave," it's like, "Oh, well, first of all, you're not giving them anything to give to.
Yeah.
That's your fault." And
Yeah.
then the people in your pews are giving out hundreds of millions of dollars a year to nonprofits. They'd give to you if you gave them something to give to.
Totally agree. That's why I think I would never go to a church that didn't support missions and like local missionaries who come and report in and all of that. I think that's nuts.
Thank you.
I mean, we will never. I don't even know if contemporary Christian church, the way it's set up structurally, is biblical. Because if you look at New Testament church, there is no buildings. Church is believers, so there's no church building. The point of church there was to take care of the widows and orphans. Everyone gave everything pitched in. I mean, it sounds like socialism, and I know a lot of people, oh, you want to be a communist or a socialist. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that I don't know if you plopped a mega church in there in the New Testament, that would fit in with any of the criteria that Jesus was saying we
Well,
should. So I don't know.
I'm gonna add one more thing to what you just said, because you have me at hello on that. I already drank the Kool-Aid you're drinking. Here's my argument. If Americans tomorrow put for sale signs on every one of our churches, the billions and billions and billions of dollars that we would make, we could solve hunger
Every single
crises and everything
hunger
else.
crisis. I know.
But we're spending our money playing church when
I
there are
know.
suffering people, and it makes
I know.
no sense.
I know. I feel the same way for the amount of foster care children and orphans and I just not that's different. That's not money. That's opening your doors. But I do think the percentage should be higher for the amount of Christians we have like living. That's my like heart thing.
I
Yeah,
couldn't
and I don't know if
agree
it's
more.
biblical to have one guy. I know everybody has like usually churches have board of directors, elders, everybody has these. However, I don't know. I can't find it in the Bible where it's like one dude gets up at a podium and like shares what God told him, and then we all go home. Like that doesn't really. But listen, we're in a deprived, horrible. That's why westernized culture. That's why I don't think we see miracles.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to use that to parlay into the next one. And that is, because we could go all day on this. It goes back to who you listen to and who you follow. So we were talking about denominations. And I used to work, just so everybody know, I used to work for Chuck Swindoll. And Chuck was one of the for him and John MacArthur were, I think, the two original pastors who recorded their sermons and put it on the radio. They're the ones who started the whole genre of
Wow.
all of us listening to other pastors.
Wow.
They started it. And so I know this industry really well. I understand the math behind radio stations and websites. So I know I have a secret behind the curtain view on all this. But to what you're saying, I also believe that the Bible talks about the gifts of preaching and teaching. It's a spiritual gift.
Right.
Nowhere in the Bible did it ever say those people are good CEOs, they're good business leaders, they're good whatever. So what you have is you have people who are good at something,
Yes.
rising to the top and sort of lording over that, oh, he's the pastor, he's the
Exactly.
boss. It's
Yep.
like,
100%.
that guy may be the worst financial guy you've ever met in your life, and he's over
And
here.
that's him. That's not his gift.
That's
Usually
not his
great
gift.
people
And,
are terrible at
and if he doesn't have the right people around him, which very few of those people do,
Yeah.
because they're type A personalities,
Yeah.
and so they lead their flocks horribly.
Yes.
And because they're good orators, they're good
Mhm.
teachers, we give them all this grace, and it creates these mega churches.
I
We're like,
know.
oh, I follow that guy. That's the dumbest thing of all time.
I know. That's why I love Francis Chan. I love Francis Chan because he won't go on social media. He's like, I don't have followers. I am a follower. Like, I honestly, I think if I can think of everybody, any like Christian leader, I think he's doing it right more than anyone that I know of. And I follow a lot. So we all do it. I follow a lot of pastors, but it's like, yep, this guy has it right, in my opinion.
I no, I like him. I hear you. And so my argument is when I hear people who follow certain people,
Mm.
I cringe.
You don't follow, you don't have your favorite. If you miss church, you will watch the sermon online from your favorite.
I do. I do. But when I hear somebody say, oh, I listen to Joel Osteen based on everything we just said, I'm like, we have a problem because I don't respect his theology. I don't respect, he's one of these people who's grown in popularity. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
we can't talk about Joel. But like, so you just mean if you disagree with who they follow, not that they follow someone, because I think we all
oh,
have.
right. No, no. I'm okay with liking someone's teaching style.
Oh,
I'm okay with consuming. But I'm saying when somebody puts somebody up on a pedestal
gotcha. Yeah.
and that person actually is not really good at what they do, and they are a type A person that's how they got there,
Yes.
that's a red flag for me because
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't show a lot of discernment
Mhm.
by following that person. Therefore, now I think less of you. And I'm not saying, hey, listen, I can raise my hand here. I may be being a pretentious theological jerk right now. I'll admit it, but I do look down on people who follow certain people and they romanticize them as great. That's a red
Yeah.
flag.
Yeah. I mean, I don't, I could get myself in trouble because I work at a Christian publishing imprint. So I work on books published by probably a lot of the people that I both are probably thinking of, the flashier,
Yeah.
they have $10,000 suits on. So I'm steeped in this and I'm mystified, honestly. I'm always like, okay, it's this back and forth tension of like, but God uses everybody. They're probably reaching a certain crowd. God can use anybody. What did he? Didn't he use a mule at some point? So
I aren't
uh,
we going? But hold on, boy, this is taking a left turn
it's not.
conversation. But aren't we back to talking about truth and grace again? Is because what you're saying is, well, let's throw that guy some
Yeah,
grace,
I'm not
and I'm
defending
also
it,
like,
but you get like,
but they
uh,
don't have good teaching, and
yeah,
I don't want anybody following somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. And so, where's the line between truth and grace? Yeah, God may use them, but I'm not going to send somebody to that person.
yeah,
Or if you're telling me the guy who's this deep, you think he's this deep, well,
yeah,
now
yeah.
I don't think you and I are going to get
Well,
along very
yeah.
well.
So it's desperate times up here in Connecticut. There's not a lot of born again. So I think you're on a little more of a selective thing. Mine's like, okay, well, maybe I can like let that slide. It wouldn't be a deal breaker if you love like Steven from Elevation or
No.
Verdict, but you know, I think for me, it's like, well, I think it might diminish the like respect. Like you kind of
Okay.
always want someone at your level, or you can learn something, or at least like you're stronger in different areas. But I think if someone, let's just poor Joel, yeah, Pastor Osteen, it's a good example because it's like that would be wouldn't be a deal breaker, but I'd have some long feisty talks.
Well, once again, people that you and I who work behind the curtain, I know who writes his devotionals. I know they're not his, they're somebody else's. Like there's a machine behind it all, and we know the machine. So
Yeah.
we creep out when we see things because we're like, that's a ghostwriter who wrote that book. That's he's preaching that sermon to set up his next book. Like we know there's a machine behind it. So I just don't value
Even if
things.
there wasn't, though, it's the theology. I mean,
That's right.
I don't know. I think some may want to pray for his soul based on what he is recent, just on what he professes. So,
I totally agree. And it's anything called your best life now, and you're
yeah,
living in a world where God's like, I'm not giving you your best life now. If you're aiming for that, you missed the point.
yeah, yeah. And I think his wife is like, "You're one big beautiful you," or so.
But
A lot
anyway,
of eyes and a lot of youth. But
we'll
yeah,
we'll, we'll stop dogpiling Joel,
grace on
but
him.
he deserves it. Okay. Um, let's go back to the dating app. I forgot to say this earlier, but I think it's super important. When you're on a dating app and somebody writes the word spiritual
Yep. Run.
or spiritual and Christian, I actually have on one of my apps in my bio, it says swipe left if you use the word spiritual, because I don't know if that means you like worship music, you do Norwegian fertility chants, or you do yoga naked. I don't know what that means. What does spiritual even mean?
So you love like the longer you're on the apps, the more like ornery and cranky you get. Like, you know what? If God is in the butterflies, don't even like I just yeah, the spiritual thing is tricky. So I have to tell my ultimate horror story on this, and it's like I'll take 60 seconds. So I met someone I was in a really long relationship with at my sister's Bible study that was put on like a life group from a church that we were both mutually going to. He was a complete stranger, a very Bible based fundamental church, so like a great church. He'd gone to for years. I find out 4 months into it, he tells me like he's going to tell me as like a mineralies or something. I have something to tell you. Gosh, what is this? I don't believe in hell. I believe people are reincarnated at least twice before they go to heaven. This may or may not be the son of God, doesn't matter. I love Jesus. And he talks to angels just as much as he does God after 4 months. And so I bring this up, not for a pity party. Yeah. We already saying I love you. And I stayed with him. So, I mean, they got it in Marion, but like my whole, if I want to like talk to people listening that are maybe like, oh, back and forth, or I'm sensing this person is definitely not a real Christian, but it's hard, better to let it go now. And if I'm honest with myself, I saw some signs that you turn a blind eye to. And I think people do that early on in dating. So you finally found someone nice. At least he goes to church. I mean, is God going to be that cruel that he's going to drop some dude in my sister's Bible study and then it's not going to work? So it's like, yeah, but I ignored things. He talked about, he had crystals everywhere. I don't care about crystals that much, but he had some books on his bookshelf that were new agey. He was so hyper spiritual. So I only bring that up because I think that's a big thing right now. I think it's tricky. People can appear to be Christians and they're just spiritual. So I agree with you. That word has become a dirty word to me.
I agree, and that's my whole argument. I don't want to fall in love with you to find out you're a wacko. I want to know whether you're a wacko right up front.
Yeah.
And the spirit here's my problem with the spiritual stuff is, well, if this person was in this room right now talking to us, and I think you're reincarnated twice before you go to heaven, based on what? Tell me where you got that. If you pulled that out of your rear,
I
and
know.
I think, if any sentence starts with "I think,"
Yeah.
I'm going to trumpet with "God says."
I know.
And so what
Yeah.
I think, I got an argument with somebody who I love. She's probably going to listen to this, and it's going to create another argument because we go round and round with this argument. Is her argument is, well, how can God send somebody to hell that never heard? Or you're telling me Jews are good people. You're telling me they're going to hell. They don't believe in Jesus. I'm like, God, I could just point to what God's, don't gripe at me. We're back to it. Do you believe the Bible? Because if you believe the Bible, we ought to both be able to go there and point and say, here's what God said. So my argument is, if it's in the Bible, then how can you say anything that contradicts it? So if you're making up a rule that people are reincarnated, if you're making up a rule that people don't go to hell, well then let's just free for all and we all just believe what we believe. Like, that's not who I need to be yoked with.
I know, and that was the number one. I think my rebuttal after I was so shocked, I was like, "Well, how do you explain the Bible?" And then he's like, "Well, I think."
Well, you're back to, if it means nothing to you, then I mean nothing to you because I need somebody who believes it. What I like to think is my maturity. Back to, you're saying you learned some hard lessons. I really love this statement. The Bible is true, but not all truth is in the Bible.
Oh, yes. I've heard you say that.
I love that phrase because what it's graduated me from was I used to only worry about what was in the Bible and I stood true on it. And now I realize, well, I don't know if crystals are right or wrong. I don't know. Maybe they do have some benefits, but God would have created it. Meaning yoga. I'm not scared of yoga. I believe yoga is actually really great. Now, the yoga that points me to anywhere other than Christ, I'm against. But me doing hamstring stretches while I pray, I don't have a problem with that. So I'm learning to learn about human psychology. I'm learning to learn about natural homeopathic remedies and things like that. I believe in them because God would have made them. So not everything not in the Bible is witchcraft.
Isn't right.
But
Yeah.
if it doesn't point you back to Christ, if it doesn't point you back to the Bible, then I now have a problem with it.
Right. So the Bible has to inform your way of viewing those things, like we talk about yoga. So again, if you're unequally yoked with someone and you get in a long, strong relationship, you're just not, you're always gonna have a divisiveness in your relationship because I feel like you're just not gonna, you don't have the same blueprint for operating life. How many problems in life is this? So you're gonna be yoked to someone who's not necessarily going your same direction. It's hard enough. I
Yeah.
think the number one thing to anyone listening is if you're like, oh, would I date a non Christian? Or just if you're thinking about this, I feel like if you want to, and if you're like, no, I really, I'm going to do it right now, or maybe you're just starting out dating, just got a divorce, and you're like, oh, should I date someone that just goes to church but doesn't seem like a Christian? I think the best thing to do is have a long talk with yourself and either commit to the idea or not. And then just tell yourself why and remind yourself why and study in the Bible what it means to be unequally yoked. Because if you're half and half wishy washy on it, you're just going to date a non Christian. So you have to, that's what because I did this years ago in my younger years. And it's like, let's just go with emotions and God's going to lead me and like, it's going to work out. And it doesn't. You're going to waste your time, your energy. You're going to break hearts. I mean, it's rough. It's better to just wait and do it the right way. And God will honor that. But you have to make up your mind first.
I totally agree, and I'm going to give you another. Just when it goes back to I'm going to pick on the Catholic for a second because I know somebody who has told me I don't believe exactly what you believe, but that's okay. I could love you and build a relationship with you. You believe what you believe, I believe what I believe, and that because they don't hold the Bible as high as I do.
Right.
So
Right.
therefore, it's easy for them to say that. I'm like,
So you
well, that's
nailed
okay.
it.
We disagree, and I'm like, no, no, no. If you believe what I believe, there's no way we can
Yeah,
agree
if our
because
family is going to go to hell,
right,
you don't believe there's a hell, I'm gonna care a little more. So it's like, how's that?
you can't compromise.
Yeah.
And once again, the Old Testament, we can learn from God's character doesn't change. God is
Mhm.
who He is. So the Old Testament we confuse sometimes tithing,
Yeah.
but God gave the Israelites certain things. He was making them His people, and He threw some big fits about kill everybody that lives here because I don't want you influenced by them. I
Mm.
want you to influence them. And the whole reason of the temple was God, like, I want you to build this temple so that all the nations see that y'all are different.
Yes.
And then when they came and he realized that no, they tore the temple down. He's like, if y'all aren't going to be an influencer, you're just going to get influence. Well, then I have no use for you. That's when he killed the fig tree, right on the
Mm.
Olivet discourse moment. And so it's the same with us. If like something has to set us apart. If Christian to you is just a little checkbox, I'm not a Hindu, whatever. If it's not bleeding
Yeah.
unintended into your life and showing itself in all these places, then what are you doing? What are you
Yeah.
doing? And why would you couple with anybody who doesn't hold a high view of God and His Word? I'm
Yeah.
not perfect. I screw up it's not perfection. Don't ever look at Todd Turner if you want perfection. But if the other person doesn't have a heart for God
Yeah.
and it's not permeating out in their life, then why would you yoke with them? Like it's the most foolish thing you can do.
Yeah. And it causes so much pain and dissension. Most of us listening or watching have been married. So an equal yoke just means there's gonna if it's that wooden harness that holds the oxen together. That's Paul was talking about. So he did that because if they weren't yoked, there'd be tension and they'd be going their different direction. So just be selfish about it. If you're like, okay, you have dreams and goals and aspirations that we all should have individually, then you get married, it's going to hinder your dreams and aspirations and goals. If you have someone pulling in the wrong direction, it's going to feel like dead weight. They're going to bring you down. It's not going to be fun. So it's like, take the spirituality out of it because I think sometimes that's easier to just be motivated by, honestly. And it's like,
That's
no,
right.
wait, it's hard enough. I mean, I'm divorced. Hard enough. Throw that in the mix. It's crazy that people even would consider it who have been divorced and the heartache and the horror of dividing up your life. Isn't it crazy that we're talking amongst Christians and not crazy in a judgy way, but isn't it just wild that that's still a consideration? And I'm talking to myself who I did this a couple years ago. Like, okay, because why? Because you're so heartbroken. You're so desperate. Your faith is tested now because you thought you're going to be married. Now you're not. So you're just like, well, maybe I'll just like deal with the breadcrumbs. Maybe I'll just, and that God that's not, there's no God in that narrative, right? But
There's no
it's like,
God.
how people do it. But it's like, I just want to give people a pep talk. It's like, I speak of authority of someone who understands and
Yeah.
has fallen flat on my face. And it's just, it doesn't even work. Yeah. So,
I love that. And I agree. I appreciate you landing the plane. I'm gonna land it another way as well. I'm gonna add a layer to what you just said, and that's prayer. We hadn't talked about prayer life, but it's one of the things. If you don't see a prayer life, that's a problem. That's
oh,
another one. But I'm gonna double down on what you just said. I don't want to always pray alone. If
yeah,
I have my own life and you have yours and you see God differently than me, then we're never going to be in unison. And I want my partner, my life partner, and I to have a vibrant prayer life together. And if
huge.
we're praying for different things, we'll never be in unison.
I
And
know.
I
I'm
don't
glad
want
you're
somebody's
bringing
like,
this up because
Lord, I
that's
want a new car. I want that vacation. I want that whatever, because they have a Joel Osteen lens on.
hmm
And I want a life that I want my partner and I to pray about things that we are aiming at, or Lord, help us find a way to help that missionary, or
yeah.
whatever it is,
Praying
be in
over your own.
lockstep.
I miss having a partner that you're like, I want someone to unite with me and do spiritual warfare over something my teenager is going through. And sometimes it's you really don't want to call your friend and do that. So it's like that is a good litmus test. I'm glad you bring that up because of the couple of relationships who were quasi Christians, half whatever, lukewarm, which isn't even a thing. It's like try praying with them and see how you feel. And there you
Try
go.
how it goes. And one, do they even want to? Two, can you tell that they've even exercised that muscle? You can
Yeah.
tell. And then three,
Wow.
what if you're in lockstep of what you're praying for? Like that bonds you in a way
Totally.
that is
That's
so
why
amazing.
I don't recommend praying until you're in a relationship because I think that's such a vulnerable, intimate, special thing that I would not. That's something where it's like, it's so special, it's so important. I wouldn't even like do that until you're in a relationship.
Okay, you just tick tipped off our next conversation, because I wrote this down of when does somebody become a spiritual leader? When do you when do you lean in to this relationship of what that would look like? And I agree with you. Prayer. I'm going to say a little something, and then we're going to end this. Is I used to pray on the first date, and I quit. I totally quit it. The practice of praying on the first date.
Like you'd pray at the end of a date?
No, I'm
What do
like
you mean?
at a meal, like praying before the meal,
Oh, yeah.
and I quit. And part of the reason I quit, and it's so funny because I've told people this, they're like, "Why would you quit?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm telling you why. Because when you pray at the beginning of the meal, I had too many women say, 'You're the first guy who's ever prayed before a meal,' or it gave me a leg up. And once I realized that it was a leg up, now I feel like like I didn't want
Oh,
to
it
be
wasn't even about you. You're
I
just
didn't want to
like,
use it as
yeah,
a weapon,
I could see
because I
that.
realized how it separates you from other people. And then
Yeah.
by me praying, I knew it. I almost batted 1,000. That every time I prayed, they said
So
something,
there
and I
you
go,
go,
"Oh,
fellas
can't do it."
listening. Maybe that's like something that the men, maybe that's the way.
But
Maybe you're
no, it's
still genuine.
bad. It's a weapon when you realize that most people don't do it, and then a woman's going to give you a checkpoint for it. And I
Yeah,
thought,
you
no,
want to be, yeah, I
to
can see
your
that.
point, it's so intimate, it's so bonding that when people pray together,
Yeah,
that I thought, that's I don't
yeah,
want to join into that until I know they're my person, and I
yeah,
backed off because I
yeah,
agree with what you
I
say.
agree. Yeah. It's funny because I'd always be the one praying over meals. So what does that say about the guys that I've always gone out with? It's like I don't think there's. I'm always like, I'll do it.
You should wear the
Not
Joel
that-
Osteen t-shirts everywhere you
yeah,
go. That'll help. Okay, this has been good. I think we landed the plane with
so
this.
fun. Yeah,
Is it matters. If somebody says they're a Christian, it's worth the vetting,
yeah,
and it's not to be condescending. And I would even say there are going to be people who listen who totally disagreed with us on 4 or 5 things. Great,
yeah,
good. Find your match.
yeah,
Find your match, because you're not going to do well if you're Church of Christ and they're Baptist, or their version of Christianity is very political and yours isn't. Now, if two people who love Christian nationalism, they may bond better.
yeah. I know it's not a sin. It's not a sin. It's not
Let
the
them go
Mormon.
do it. But
I agree.
but if you got to know what to identify to know where the problems are,
Yeah. And you
and
have to
you
know who
might as
you
well
are
do it
and what's
early.
important to you. Sometimes you have to do the work yourself first before you even go out there.
That's exactly right. Okay, I hope this helps. I wish we had landed the plane better, but it's good enough to know there's a problem. It has to be addressed, and don't take it flippantly. And if you listen to any of this and you thought, well, I don't do any of those things, well, that may be a problem too. Like, take the word Christian out there. It means something. It should be something. You're either a follower of the way or you're not. Doesn't mean you're perfect. But if somebody's not, doesn't hold the Bible, the truths of the Bible, and their relationship with Christ highly, well, that's a problem, and it's not going to work. Period.
Yeah, and we're doing it right this time, guys. So no more mistakes.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. Look forward to this next one because we're going to go deeper even. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the UnYoked podcast with me, Todd Turner. Can I ask you a favor? Two, actually. First, rating and reviewing this podcast positively goes a long way to help others find this resource. I get told constantly, I wish I knew of this podcast earlier. Well, you can make that happen with just a simple rating on the podcast app you're listening to right now. Also, when you're done with that, please go to toddturner.com/books and purchase, gift, and review the resources that we have available for those needing help in their divorce journey. It's a lot easier handing somebody a book sometimes than handing them a podcast. And your Amazon reviews really help get our books higher on the chart for others to find. toddturner.com/books. Thanks so much. And please, really, just review the podcast really quick. Thank you.